Good afternoon from the Shreveport office of Eagle Financial Management Services for the May 21st, 2021 edition of the Jack and
Westley.
you're not Bill, Westley show. Markets were down slightly this week for the second week in a row, with the exception of the NASDAQ composite, which went up slightly today. Markets starting off on a higher note this morning, but fizzling at the close. So here we are. The S&P 500 is now up about 11.4% year to date on a total return basis, Westley. That means with dividends reinvested. Flat on the day. Dow and S&P fizzling in the last 10 minutes to close. S&P was down slightly. Not sure if the Dow eked out a gain or not. The Russell was up. Small cap index, Russell 2000 was up 2/3%. Fizzled to up about 1/3% today. Gold closing at 1883.
That was a good year.
Gold, well, actually 1883.
Great year.
That's $1,883 an ounce. Kind of flat today, but Wesley, a lot of people were saying that cryptocurrencies had supplanted gold. And in fact, Bill and I were discussing this a few months ago, saying it's probably a good time to buy gold when it was down about 10%, and it has risen sharply. And it's now, here we are, May 21st, and gold is now flat on the year. So if you bought it a few months ago, you've made 10% on your money so far. Let's see. Silver was down pretty good today at $27.62. But in the last year, in the last 12 months, it's up about 56%. West Texas Intermediate rising sharply today, up $1.86 to close at 63.79. Gasoline prices still very high, with the Colonial Pipeline having been hacked and shut down, but they paid the ransom, and we should see gasoline supplies normalizing. The bond market was up a little bit today, with safe havens bond yields relatively flat, kind of rising sharply year to date, but kind of holding their own right here, trading sideways. 2-year Treasury note closed to yield just shy of 18/100% or 18 basis points. The 10-year 1.627%, and the 30-year at 2.35. Big news on the day, Wesley. Ford Motor announcing you're going to be able to buy one of these things next year and drive it.
A lightsaber.
The F-150 Lightning.
Close.
And if your power goes out in your house, it will keep your house going for 3 days. These things, they've got a price tag of $39,500.
Yeah.
And the CEO came out and said that it is the Coca-Cola of electric trucks. I wonder what Elon Musk is going to counter with.
Probably the Pepsi of electric trucks.
Because theirs is, I don't know if you can drive one of those yet, but
or 7-Up.
Anyway, Ford Motor Company closing somewhere around $13.45 a share, up about $1, or call it 7.7%. I'll give you the big sporting news before we get started. The PGA,
we haven't started yet?
PGA Championship is going, with day 2 at a conclusion for Phil Mickelson, or Lefty, wearing the workday shirts on the golf course in South Carolina. He shot another 2 under today after 3 under today and 2 under yesterday. The 51-year-old lefty is leading the PGA. That's pretty amazing. So anyway, well, I was out of town last week at the SEC track meet, and I tuned in on the way home to listen to the Bill and Westley show. And I don't know if Bill has formally introduced. We recently hired Westley. He is an investment advisor
Junior
trainee, But he's a social media marketing expert and website designer. He's done ours. Check it out. What's the website?
EagleFMS.com.
EagleFMS.com. You don't speak as loudly as I do, I've noticed.
Well, I'll be truthful. I'm thinking that if we would have brought Liam Neeson in, we wouldn't have paid that ransom. He has a certain set of skills that would have gotten our pipeline back.
I think you're right.
I know I'm right.
So the next time this happens,
because it probably will happen again.
Wonder they paid in cryptocurrency, I think.
In Bitcoin, yeah.
They
pay them, and then all of a sudden it goes down.
In Bitcoin. And if they would have called Liam Neeson, he probably would have come running to the rescue.
Yeah.
Anyway, we wanted to add cryptocurrency stuff. This year, this is what's different that I've noticed about cryptos. They've been hammered. They closed out the week way down at the end of the close of the markets today. There's actually futures contracts that trade on Bitcoin now. Did you know that, Wesley? So that's a first. But this has been dominating the news. Why companies are buying Bitcoin. This newspaper article, this is from April the 20th. MicroStrategy, a software company, MSTR, owns 91,579 Bitcoin at a market value of something like $5 billion. Tesla owns 48,000 Bitcoin. Square, Marathon Digital Holdings, Riot Blockchain, investment manager Bill Miller, between his was interviewed in Barron's recently, and his Amazon and Bitcoin holdings, and his Bitcoin holdings are bigger than Amazon, has made him a billionaire. So we've got Paul Tudor Jones. We've got some institutional people and corporations taking an interest in this thing that I think is changing the landscape a little bit. But I want to give the big picture,
right,
according to Jack, and this is what I've noticed. Until this year, we as a firm, through our custodian, the institutional arm of Charles Schwab, we really had no way of owning cryptocurrencies in a reasonable fashion.
Right.
Okay, because a cryptocurrency is not a security.
Right.
Now, they have been securitized, so you can own cryptocurrencies through securities now. They've been through closed-end funds, Toronto-based exchange-traded fund or ETF. But this is just the big picture. We started getting, generally it's the wrong kind of clients that start acquiring about this stuff, and you could call that hype or FOMO.
FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, that's why businesses are buying it. They don't want to miss out on the
Same
return.
Thing. Okay, that's part of it. But I would say that I've had maybe 30 client inquiries about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and when we looked at this subject a few years ago, and there's a company called Grayscale that came out and created these closed-end funds. They've now filed with the SEC to convert them into less expensive and more liquid exchange-traded funds or ETFs. But these things got hyped up so much that they were trading at like 100% premium to what the underlying cryptos were actually worth. So that would be, hideous or most unreasonable, for us to contemplate purchasing those for our clients until they swung a few weeks ago to even double-digit discounts. So, this is really my stance. I want to come out here and say this with the big picture in our introduction. Episode number 2.
Circling back around.
We believe that it may be prudent for not all clients, but some of our clients to have a 1%, no more than 2% weighting in this space of their investable assets. Anything more than that would, in my opinion, would be certainly termed a gamble. Now, some people, if you want to speculate or gamble or you like playing blackjack, go buy cryptocurrencies. These things fluctuate. Check us out on Twitter or Facebook Live. You can see that Bitcoin has had 40, 50% corrections numerous times in its 11 or 12-year history. And that's the largest crypto, out there. So blockchain and cryptocurrency technology has come about, prospered, and proliferated due to mistrust in the world central banking system. That's what's gotten this thing going, Wesley. So, but I just want to reiterate, we're not going to be, we may, when we start off with what have the markets done, what are gold and silver doing, which are an alternative to fiat money, phony currency, depreciating fiat, gold and silver, things like that. We may throw in, the crypto or other, prominent crypto quotes. But this is for aggressive clients that can handle a little volatility. And back to the big picture. This is 1% of client assets. Okay, only for those that we think can stomach some volatility, don't have an aversion to it. And here's the way I look at this. If we're targeting reasonable returns without undue risk, and let's just say that, we make 8 or 9 or 10% in client accounts this year, and we own a 1% position in Bitcoin and it goes to zero. Well, if that account, otherwise would have made 10%, it's now going to make 9%. So there's not a whole lot lost there. The other side to that argument is that 8 out of the last 11 years, Bitcoin's been the best performing asset of anything out there. 8 out of 11 years.
Yeah.
So if you own a 1% position in that, I wouldn't own it for fear of missing out. But I think this thing could easily go up another 10 times. And okay, Wesley. So I've got, here's myth number 1: Bitcoin cannot be valued. What would you say to that?
I think that there's discussion in where the value lays. I've heard arguments that if it was to drop to 20,000, that's probably where it belongs. And then I hear on the other side of it, people that are kind of, they have a good chunk of change invested into it, and they think it could go even higher. Some are saying a popular number right now is 100K.
Okay, that's good. I mean, but in the world that we live in, Bill and I look at PE ratios, we look at book value, we look at things like that. You have to have a reasonable basis for what you're saying. Not just, now what you're talking about is just historical price. But that's the thing, this thing I think has gone, I said, prospered and proliferated the last 11 years due to mistrust in the world central banking systems, which seems to be worsening from my perspective. And so here's, if you have worldwide, I looked at some of this from our friends, the Miller Value Funds, worldwide fiat currency, you can call that phony currency, is 175 trillion approximately all around the world. The market cap of Bitcoin was over $1 trillion. It's about 800 billion right now. That's 21 million coins, finite number that will be the most ever mined. We're almost there at around 19 million coins times 37,500 a coin gets you at 800 billion. The finite number of coin is what I think that's most appealing. if you add up the market capitalizations, that is the number of coin times the coins outstanding, the whole crypto universe is only 2 trillion. And the fiat currency universe worldwide is 175 trillion. And because of quantitative easing or money printing, the market cap of Bitcoin is exceeded in the worldwide fiat currency market about every 2 weeks. So that's a way. What if, cut it with a meat axe? What if this continues, and that looks like the likely path, which I don't think is forever. We're going to have to go back to an asset-based system. And you could argue that Bitcoin is fiat too, because essentially, if you think of U.S. Treasuries, we abandoned the gold standard.
All right.
We'll talk more about that. There's really nothing backing it other than the reputation of the United States, which I think financially, some of the things that have made America great historically, responsibly financially thinking, are diminishing. So, what if Bitcoin could reach 5% of total worldwide currency outstanding, and you have a finite number of coins that never goes over 21 million? Or what if, do you have any idea what the worldwide gold market is outstanding?
No.
It's about 10 trillion. So that's, you could think of that as a real currency. That's a store of value. It's been around since biblical times, same as silver. What if, so Bitcoin is, less 8% of the gold outstanding. I mean, what if that could capture, 30 or 40% of that? This is all kind of pie in the sky.
Right.
But this thing started at like a nickel a coin. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it went to 200, then 300, then 1,000, then 10,000, then 62,000, something like that.
Upwards of 70.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but that's the thing with all cryptocurrencies. They all started at this low amount. And, even when Ethereum or the real popular one right now is Doge, started out as completely as a joke. And I even remember when it was like 4 or 3 cents a coin. And now it peaked to a certain amount, I think close to like above 60 cents or something. And then now it's kind of been resting at 30. But all of them start at this low value. There's some that are less than a penny, but people keep going back into that circle because, with this coming out, we see Bitcoin being as strong as it is, but there's still some other ones that we don't know how long they'll last and how big they'll get over time. Bitcoin's still relatively young.
So this, to me, here's a big question with this. Okay, so Bitcoin gets up to 63,000, on its way to 70,000, wherever it peaked, I think around April the 15th, maybe April 20th, somewhere in there. Last I looked, when the market closed today, it was around 37,500. So that's a huge decline.
Right.
Okay. Which it's done, many times. So is that a buy or a sell or a hold? It's interesting the way the human mind works and the psychology of investing, Westley, is that what we tend to do is we watch the price action of stocks or commodities or bonds or whatever, and whatever news, whatever information we have most recently, we give the greatest weighting in our brains, and then we extrapolate it into the future on the same path.
Right.
Now, that would mean that Bitcoin's, going lower. That's what our brain wants to tell us. And I think, what's interesting about this to me, and I think it's more attractive the lower it goes. That is true with any investment. We like to buy things that are on sale. So Is that on sale? I think it's on sale if you value it, if you look at where this thing could be in the future. And there's no guarantee with this.
No.
I mean, it could go to zero. But I think what we've seen a lot in the news is we've had huge price swings. Arguably, you could say because of wild speculation to date. I think this is the case, part of the case. You're a millennial. It's your generation. It's people like you that follow and track this stuff and try to make a buck. But we have until Robinhood came about, there was no way to buy Bitcoin or any crypto in a brokerage account or from a brokerage firm. And this is kind of interesting that I've learned recently too with GameStop and AMC movie theaters. The average account size with our custodian Charles Schwab is 250,000. I think the institutional arm of Schwab, the account size is actually larger than that. The average account size at Robinhood is 2,000. So these are people that have 100 or 200 bucks left over at the end of their work week, and they want to speculate in Dogecoin or Doggy Coin or Ethereum or Bitcoin or even, I mean, Bitcoin is kind of dull and boring to some of these people. No, what would you add to that?
Well, that's a big chunk. Years ago, when I was, I'll kind of use a story. We used to talk. I was selling workout supplements, and we'd always talk about how we lowered the cost because it was easier to make 2 nickels than it was 1 long dime. While the institutional arm of Schwab and their average account is X amount higher than, say Robinhood, but before Robinhood, people were using Coinbase. Before Coinbase, people were using a different outlet. And so there's the majority, granted this is becoming, like Bitcoin specifically, is becoming more institutionalized, which is now creating an anti-Bitcoin movement. So there's that. I think we, in this, to speak in a derogative manner towards the smaller investor, is kind of, they're making up the bulk of the pot, though. They may only have $200 in it.
Okay, this brings my next point.
That's good, because I didn't even know it.
I think that the investment case or the bullish side of owning cryptos, and I'm really interested in the most established ones, or
right?
I think they're
the safest.
There's really only 3 or 4 that we have a way to purchase through our custodian. But this is what I personally believe. Okay, I'm just going to throw this out there, but I believe this along with some other people a lot smarter than I am. I think that Bitcoin is way, way under-owned. That's the whole point of Schwab Institutional versus Robinhood. Okay, so you could, I think that you could liken this whole cryptocurrency thing to the start of the internet or the start of social media, and you've got recent buyers. I mean, Bill Miller's owned it almost since the inception. Paul Tudor Jones, a huge investment guru name, Massachusetts Mutual, PayPal, Square, Tesla, most of these names just this year. MicroStrategy, their CEO Michael Saylor, and who did I leave out? Marathon Digital Holdings, Riot Blockchain. So what if, among pension funds, endowment funds, large institutions, I think less than 1% of these institutions have any exposure to cryptocurrency. This could really impact. Do you realize? Here's an interesting stat that just came to me. I'll give you a quiz. How many?
I'm going to get it wrong
How
and
many?
fail.
How many millionaires are there in the whole world?
I don't know.
Do you know, Bill? It's estimated recently that there are 43 million millionaires in the world. So, do you realize that if each millionaire wanted to own one Bitcoin, only about half of them, roughly half of them, could do that? So that's kind of an interesting way, I'm borrowing that analysis from Bill Miller. The Millers, Miller 3 and Miller 4, have been writing, a lot about this. But here's the other thing. Have you ever heard of Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs?
Yes, of course. Who hasn't?
These are the biggest names in the brokerage industry. They've come on board and have decided that they need to give their clients access to cryptos.
Right.
So let me ask you a question here, and then continue on. Can crypto supplant fiat? What do you think about that?
We just print more of it. We're already printing money. It's only a matter of time till we get back to trading goats.
Well, I think that I actually think that fiat is going to go away at some point in the future. I think it's going to have a really ugly end before it goes away, and I don't think it's anything that's imminent. It could be, there's an interesting book. This time is different, written by Harvard professors Reinhardt and Rogoff, and they look at country failures throughout history, going back centuries. A country like Argentina, which recently failed, Mexico has failed before. What is it that makes these countries fail? Is in almost every case, what's made their bonds fail is there's one day that the national debt or the debt to GDP becomes so large that the general population no longer believes in the government's ability to pay it. Okay. This is something that's happening. 1.7 trillion stimulus program, sent to the Republicans today. I mean, they chopped a little bit out of that though, but our national debt, well over 20 trillion, larger than the size of our economy. This is what I think is making crypto really take off, Wesley, in the last 11 years with Bitcoin, is that I think that there's been a growing sense among speculative types and then people that are the long-term holders that are true investors that there may be some staying power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. So what's it mean or what's it say to the situation when somebody is reputable and recognized, respected as Warren Buffett will have no part of this? I mean, he's very vocal, and him and his top associates are very vocal against Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. I mean, how does that speak?
Well,
to
I think if you want to do an objective analysis, you have to look at the bad things.
Absolutely.
Like, could it go to zero? I think that the answer to that question is yes, though I think that's highly unlikely. I think what bothers Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, his associate, the most is the criminal activities that are associated, with this alternative means of exchange.
Right. And we touched a little bit about that last
There
week.
is definitely China's come out with their e-currency, the United States Treasury. It's in the news every day. They want to figure out a way to tax
Oh yeah.
Bitcoin transactions, and they're coming out with their currency.
Right.
I actually think this validates the cryptos or certain cryptos. Okay. Um, so I think the thing about Warren Buffett though is, a lot of people have been critical of Warren Buffett because he's lagged, the last 5 and 10 years,
Right.
and is he right about that? I don't think so. He's certainly
Only time will tell.
he's the smartest guy in the room, but sometimes you need wisdom to go along with your intellect.
Well, kind of the old saying is like if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Really, that's another conversation. But this is no. Think about this. Okay, so Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin was probably not the first one, or was it the first one?
I think it was probably the first.
Okay.
There were probably some trials that went out there. Like there was, MySpace before Facebook.
Okay, so this thing is 11 or 12 years old now, something like that. Think about this. So, and it has gone up exponentially in price. But think about what's been in the works underlying all this stuff. Our national debt has been taking off exponentially. Same thing with Japan and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Could the rise of crypto be foretelling something ugly? I actually believe that. In 1933, we had a 40% reduction in the gold content of the dollar. And in 1971, under Richard Nixon, we went fully fiat. I can remember, I grew up a coin collector. My grandfather was the largest coin dealer in South Central Pennsylvania. And I got really intrigued at, I'd go visit my grandparents, and there'd be different kinds of really old, unique looking coins lying all over the house. He was kind of sloppy and messy and I guess trusting as well. But that fascinated me, and I remember the large blue seals on some of these paper notes that said an ounce of silver payable to the bearer upon demand. They had silver certificates and gold certificates. Are you aware of this?
No, I wasn't alive then.
There's paper currency. You could look these up. You could Google this when you go home. Every now and then you'll find these in your currency. And it says that right on the $10 notes, $100 notes, all that stuff. That you could, until 1933, turn those in for gold and silver.
Wow.
Okay. So, so our currency at one time was a store of value. I mean, you can call it a store of value today. But this Bitcoin thing, it is a disruptive technology. It's a radically disruptive, technology. That brings up another question that I would say, because here's a unique way to look at this. And I pose another question. Is cryptocurrency a portfolio diversifier? Here's what I like about it. I mean, what do you think?
I think it can be. And it can be used as such, but you're still not owning any actual cryptocurrency. You're owning stock in a company that they themselves have cryptocurrency. You yourself don't have it. So if something happens to that company, how does that affect that stock?
No, I don't.
Let's say MicroStrategies. Something happens with MicroStrategies, and we have X amount of whatever in MicroStrategies. If something happens to them, we don't actually own the Bitcoin. We owned MicroStrategies. So how does that affect us?
Well, I'm going to go back to my question: is cryptocurrency a diversifier? And I think I don't really. I would tend to disagree with you, kind of there, Westley. I mean, it's possible that Michael Saylor at MicroStrategy, there could be accounting fraud or something really bizarre. I mean, that's a one in a gazillion,
right?
and their company could fail, or he could personally steal the crypto, or I mean,
There's a lot of things that could
that's
happen.
so rare, and
Right.
even in the history of open-end mutual funds or closed-end funds, these things are highly regulated, and there could be potential problems there, but I think that would be exceptionally rare too. The question is, I mean, when we own, we've talked previously about Markowitz Sharp optimization and the efficient frontier, and owning like if you like owning the business of owning a resort in the summertime, and in the rainy winter season you sell umbrellas. Perfectly uncorrelated businesses, which I think you get that. Here's
Yeah.
here's my answer to where I was going. I think that cryptocurrency is perfectly negatively correlated to fiat, very much like gold. And I'll give you an example. Do you know how much it cost, an ounce of gold cost in 1934?
Again, wasn't alive.
Okay. I wasn't alive either.
You
But
what?
I'll just tell you, it's interesting.
I mean, I could know it.
Because I was looking at this earlier. I thought I knew the answer to that, and I actually did. And I think I actually, oh, here it is. So in 1934, it was $34.69. So $34 could buy you an ounce of gold.
Yeah.
Today, it takes $1,882 to buy an ounce of gold. I would call that dollar depreciation, or an inverse relationship between the dollar, and a currency called gold or silver. Okay, so actually, what's interesting about the price of gold too is that the government tried to control the price of it. They set the price at $35, but in the end, ultimately, I think that we're going to see a lot of government intervention that tries to
Do exactly what they did to gold.
Exactly, or cryptos this week. China crypto's blowing up this week, you could say, because of China. What did China do this week?
So China basically tried to limit the ability through its financial institutions from receiving it, taking payment, or whatever, any type of transaction, but they didn't limit the individual from owning it. So basically, they're saying you as an individual could own this, but we're not going to open up 15 Bitcoin ATMs that are in Shreveport. We have more Bitcoin ATMs than we have Starbucks.
Oh, we have 15 Bitcoin ATMs. That's right. That's amazing.
And weird.
So, in some weird places in town, which would kind of make the case for Warren Buffett's argument. Yes, but yeah, this is like the third time the Chinese have done this, though. So I think that you expect this in the future. You expect these e-currencies to come out because governments do not like this cryptocurrency thing and what it's evolved to. So I think all of this government intervention actually validates and makes the case to have some exposure in this asset class.
Right. I mean, and while some people like Warren and others that would try to point to the criminal activity related to cryptocurrency, but you can't do that without ignoring all the criminal activity related to the US dollar. Like, we can't just pretend prohibition didn't exist. We can't just pretend that there wasn't a mafia. There wasn't just, guess what they all used? They weren't using cryptocurrency. They were all using money. They were using our US dollar, and to say, well, Bitcoin's used for this. Well, before Bitcoin existed, people were requesting,
Yeah, you really can't say that money or any medium of exchange is bad. It's the bad actors
Yeah, it's the
that.
people that are involved in the process.
But this is, I made this point. Governments can attempt to determine asset prices, but only temporarily. Markets determine asset prices,
Yeah.
and that's the other. I think this is kind of a myth. I mean, to say there's a partial truth in this that the cryptos move with hype. I think the lesser ones or the new ones that Elon Musk is tweeting about, all that stuff is clearly hype. But what about the guys that got in there at $5 or $200 and they still own their coin? Are they moved by any kind of hype? And that is in some cases that's float that's not out there. It's
Mm-hmm.
really just not part of the tradable market. So you get more and more long-term people with a finite number of coins. Just speaking about Bitcoin, that's the one advantage that I think that Bitcoin has over all the others, like Ethereum. Ethereum is the exchange, Ether, being the coin. Nobody knows how many coins are out there.
Right.
But at least, when you buy Ethereum, you get the crypto and the exchange, and you're getting transaction revenue and things like that in addition to owning. But it is bothersome to me if I were to own a crypto and nobody knows how many of them exist because there could potentially be an infinite number the way these things are, mined.
Right.
So, so I think, and I think that you can't say that there's nothing fundamental behind these things either. I mean, the long-term investors, the corporations, these Michael Saylor is regarded as a brilliant man. Okay, or Elon Musk. Okay,
Yeah.
why would Elon Musk buy something if he didn't have a? I can't imagine him buying something and not having a fundamental basis for doing that.
Right. I mean, even when he initially made, because it was after his initial notification that Tesla wasn't going to receive it as payment, that it dropped about 30%, that he also had to come back around and go, like, we may not be receiving it as payment, but we're also not selling it. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
and so, which some people even speculated that really what that's about is Elon preparing to move into the energy industry.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's a
could be.
possibility. So,
Well,
but that's speculation.
I was looking at some notes I scribbled down here, and just to reiterate, I was thinking, I was just kind of thinking this. There's many things that have made America great that seem to be diminishing financially. And I think you could say this about Europe and Japan, this whole fiat idea that, we have interest rates that are zero, and in Europe and Japan, even negative. Now, if I would have told you that CD rates or treasury rates in Germany were going to be negative 10 years ago, you would have thought I was nuts.
Right.
So we've propped up the value of assets in America and around the developed world with 0% interest rates. Actually, the developing world too. And even think of our seniors today that are getting, 0.25% on their certificates of deposit, guaranteed by the U.S. by the full faith, credit, and taxing power of our U.S. government. The meaning behind that is diminishing.
Yeah.
Our debt and debt to GDP is increasing at an alarming rate. This, to me, is what makes the case for having a very diversified portfolio, but having, a small position in cryptos. And
it's not going away.
Yeah. So, and we do emphasize in a small way, and and cryptos are definitely not for everybody.
Our cameraman's much worse than I am.
So, and can these? We want to reiterate this. Could they lose 80% of their value? Bitcoin has had 80% corrections. Means you put 100 grand into it and it goes to 20,000. That's not like the kind of securities that we normally invest in, and it potentially could lose. Cryptos are basically another form of fiat, you could say.
Right, we said that.
There's nothing backing them.
Right.
Okay, other than a belief. Cryptos are an idea.
Yeah, no, they absolutely
are. But I think that the way this thing has been going, the other side of that is I could easily see why. Bill Miller, the Millers have made the case for Bitcoin at 350,000 and 500,000.
Right.
I don't think it would be surprising to them if it did it, in a year. That would not be. So this is the thing. This is another way that I've thought about trying to value this thing. Is if you think about, the ways that you can, like event stocks or something like that, you can come up with a probability distribution model to let's just say that we had 5 different scenarios for Bitcoin as an example. And let's say that there's a 20% probability that all this stuff happens with fiat and world central banks continue to act irresponsibly. And therefore, we think there's a 20% chance that Bitcoin goes to $500,000 within 5 years. Then we think there's a 5 or 10% probability that government intervention comes and they're successful and it goes to zero. Well, if you take all these different probabilities, and you do the math, and then you do the summation, and you divide by the different scenarios, you come up with this thing called an expected value. And I think, statistically speaking, the expected value for Bitcoin is 5 years from now is much, much higher than it is right now. Could I be wrong? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. But is Bitcoin a hustle? Do you think Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs believe that Bitcoin is some kind of a hustle? Okay.
It depends on, you and I could have the exact same thing given to us, and because of who we are, produce 2 different things. So is Bitcoin a hustle? In some people's hands, yes. And in some people's hands, no. There's people that have been holding on to this since its inception, since the day that it was $100 a Bitcoin. Or then there's the people that are bought into it thinking that it was going to go to like 75,000, but they bought it at 55 and they thought that it was going to do it in the next 3 days because they read something crazy on Reddit, because there's those people out there. And
well, one thing, are you intentionally trying to counter me in some way?
No, I'm just pointing out that yes, it could be considered. I told you I was going to play devil's advocate.
We're in the well, you could try to play angel's advocate. No.
There's no Charlie in here.
We're in the business of giving investment advice.
Right.
So and this is how, one way, unless you've got some things to add, you haven't talked a whole lot. Sometimes I think
you've talked a whole lot.
So what have I left out?
What have you left out? Here's where I would say, or what you could add into it. We've talked about how we feel like it's important to have some type of level of expression in your portfolio to have that, and we've done that with our client. Can we say that? I don't know. Yes, we've done that, and we've even changed our position to a degree as how we're seeing this, because it is available. It's becoming even more greatly available.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second.
This is why I don't talk very much.
No, we did, as we looked at this like 5 years ago and couldn't find a way to buy it.
Yeah.
And then when it went into the stratosphere, we were not fans because we thought that these things were ridiculously overpriced with
Oh, yeah.
nothing behind them. Okay, keep going.
So I I think what we really should be what we focus on at this point is how how can we best advise those who are not clients at this point, because you've had clients reach out to you and like, hey, we even saw a lot of feedback when we expressed kind of our views and things of that nature. And people said like you would be crazy not to have something in it, but part of the issue is there was no way to actually own it because it's not a security.
I try not to give investment advice at cocktail parties and things like that. Anyway, Wesley.
I would greatly disagree with you.
So,
I'm kidding. But my
no.
point,
So, I mean, if someone asks us that,
my point being is like, for the people that are watching that may not be uh, members of the Eagles Nest, you're like, it's branding. But it's we're getting told it's 4 o'clock, but Bill went to 4:10 last week.
okay, we're wrapping it up.
But my point being in this is, how would you advise those who are not clients right now to move forward if they want to increase their standing in it, not just Bitcoin but overall, like they want to. It's great that you've made
good.
something
That's good
in Bitcoin, but here's with its ability to go back and forth so much, how do you create stability?
I think it's interesting that I have a friend that used to own a commodities brokerage firm, and we talk and strategize at least once a week.
Mm-hmm.
We text almost daily. I could probably say daily, and so I went to him because he's been in cryptos for a long time, and he said, "Start slow and nibble at it,
Mm-hmm.
and then." Take profits if it trades up wildly, and use market bumps, roadblocks, government intervention. What we've seen this week is opportunities to get your feet wet or to add to positions. And I would say this for someone who's internet savvy like you, Wesley. Uh, you can open up a Robinhood account. I wouldn't recommend that. Um, but you can open up a Coinbase account on the internet. You can buy whatever crypto that you want to. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have not engaged that or looked into that. At all.
Interestingly enough, during this week, both of those companies had major issues because so many people were moving around their cryptocurrency.
I would imagine most of them getting out.
Trying
But yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, we essentially we have three different vehicles that we've been using, and where we said even a year ago there wasn't a reasonable way for us through a Charles Schwab account to gain exposure or access to cryptocurrencies. I personally feel like there's three really good vehicles, right now. One is a common stock that's 90% Bitcoin, and there are two closed end funds about to be exchange traded funds where we can get exposure to Bitcoin and the other, the London based Ethereum. And so, yeah, I would just say in closing, if you're a client or if you're a prospective client or you like some help with this, we're not interested in opening up an account and putting you into cryptocurrency. That's not what we do. I mean, we largely target reasonable returns without undue risk in a mix of diversified assets, stocks and bonds, and alternatives that conform to our understanding of your objectives or
Right.
time horizon, risk tolerance, return expectations, liquidity needs, income needs, what the money's for. So don't call us if you just want to get exposure to.
Right.
But yeah, we think again it's not for everybody, but we also think that it's. I believe that the probabilities are in favor of Bitcoin. Being here another 10 years or longer. I mean, we could be wrong about that, and an investment in these things can certainly go to zero. But I think the odds are some of these continue forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to put it simply, we look at what's best or the best avenue to reach your financial goals, whatever that might be. And diversification, which is like, I mean, you talk to anybody and they're going to say diversification is the key. If you don't, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you trip and fall and break all your eggs, you don't have any chickens.
That's true. And I'll reiterate
The analogies I come up with.
Any cryptocurrency by itself is highly speculative. They are speculative in nature. So it's you can't take that lightly.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That just about concludes today's show.
that just about concludes today's show.
I know normally you go into sports, but I would just suggest people go to ESPN.com for right now.
Because
that's like the third time we've heard these church bells.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, next week, what's the topic going to be next week, Wesley?
Probably circling back around the second time.
No, I don't think so.
I hope not.
I was thinking of a topic that we could talk about. Well, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to discuss anything that we talked about today, give us a phone call, send us a message.
Email us.
Call Bill or myself. Don't call Westley until he's licensed.
Exactly.
And we want to say, what do you want to tell everybody before we go?
Make interesting decisions.
Make good decisions this weekend, and stay dry, and we'll see you next Friday.
Toodaloo.
Peace out.
A-Town. What's up?